Welcome to the show. This is our new edition of CourtSide Chatting with our We Care Partners tennis program, and we're excited about being able to have an opportunity again to talk to Barbara Kukla, who has proliferated many of the interests that are necessary for people to understand the really wonderful history that exists here in New Jersey, and particularly Newark, New Jersey. Some of the established productions that she has made has really authenticated a number of questions that people were unable to have answered. And now there are books and different ways in which they can be able to research information because of her good work. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, once again, it's really a pleasure, because I think this is the third book that you and I have discussed. Yes. And We Care Partners and the We Care Partners tennis program is really interested in making sure that we raise awareness, not only in particular about the product itself, but the individual. You know how we do in terms of wanting to pay respect to individuals who have done a phenomenal job in our community, and you're certainly one of them.
Thank you very much.
So I'm very happy that you gave your time and opportunity to come and give credibility to what we're doing here in our program.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you so much. It's interesting now, this book that you have put out, Newark Women, from suffragettes to the State House. Yes. So I guess my first pleasure is to understand, what is a suffragette?
A suffragette is a person, a woman, generally. Well, it's jet means means women, but a suffragette or a suffragist is a person who was working more than 100 years ago to secure the right for women to vote. In New Jersey, women could vote early in the history of the state. In the late 1700s up until 1804, they were allowed to vote. But then there was a big battle as to where to put the Essex County Courthouse.
Okay.
Now, Elizabeth was part of Newark at that point in time, so many people, men particularly, wanted it in Elizabeth. Other people wanted it in Newark, where it is today, and has been since then. So, but in 1804, there was a vote on that. The women decided to vote by 431 votes. Their vote determined that it would be in Newark. Many of the male legislatures didn't like that, so they basically expunged the records. They did away with the right vote to repeal it. So women could not vote. Women did not get a right to vote again until 1919 with the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
But if you heard of Susan B. Anthony,
right.
These are Pete Frederick.
So now, the idea of the opportunity for women to have the right to vote was a federal issue, not a statewide issue?
No, it was state by state, and
so when you say the Constitution, you mean the state Constitution?
No, the federal Constitution was changed, but each state had to ratify it.
Okay. So they had to follow suit with it as well?
Yeah, they had to have a certain number of I think it was 20-something, 27, 28 states that would approve it. If they didn't approve it, then it would not have become a federal law.
Oh, I see. And then once they approved it, they made their modifications because the federal government had gotten the approval.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Okay.
Right. But it was a big fight. It was 70 years. It started in the 1850s when Susan B. Anthony and Katie Stanton. Frederick Douglass was part of their initial convention in the 1850s. Women fought like crazy. They had marches and events and handed out literature and protested all over the place for the right to vote, but nobody paid any attention to them.
Oh, wow.
Finally, may I see the book for a second?
Sure.
Yeah. Just to show your listeners, viewers, this is the cover. Newark Women from Suffragettes to the State House, which tells the story of the whole book. The first part of the book is dedicated to the suffragettes. Okay. New Jersey. New Jersey women played a huge role. If they didn't do what they did, I wouldn't be voting today, nor would any woman.
We're talking about across the country, though.
Well, women in general.
Right.
Yes, women in general.
But I mean, in terms of the kind of image and the influence that they had made in New Jersey, it transpired to
But it was more than in New Jersey, because these women here on the cover of the book are marching down Broad Street.
Oh, really?
Where do you think they're going?
That's to the state, to City Hall.
No.
Where?
They took 23 days. They were marching to Washington, D.C. This is in February. If you look closely, some of them don't have coats on.
Right.
So it must have been a warm February day when they started off. New Jersey was so important in the movement. This is the first feminine movement before the ERA or any of this. That it was so important that the New York women came to Newark. And it didn't start in New York, it started here. So it shows you how influential New York women in particular were. They started here, they marched 23 days to Washington in the winter. They stopped at Woodrow Wilson's house. By the time they got to Washington, it was the eve of his inaugural for his first term as President of the United States, 1913. Okay, they marched up Pennsylvania Avenue on the eve of the inauguration. It was interesting, and all white women, if you look, all white women.
Right.
Black women had no rights whatsoever.
Right.
And it took, you know, I mean, equality is a huge question mark to this day and probably beyond. But in those days, there was a woman from Ohio, black woman named Ida B. Wells, who was a crusading black woman journalist. Ida B. Wells was in Washington when everybody arrived, and they were picking up people as they went along. They picked up people in Maryland and Delaware, and until they got to Washington. By the time they got to Washington, there was more than 8,000 women involved totally.
Wow.
In the march, Ida B. Wells went to the Alice Paul, who was from New Jersey and was the instigator, more or less, very radical woman from South Jersey. She was the founder of the parade, creator of the organizer of the parade, with another woman, Lucy Burns. Ida B. Wells, the black journalist from Ohio, went to them and said, our black woman from Ohio would like to, we plan to march. Not like to, we plan to.
Right.
Alice Paul, this is a white women's movement, said there'll only be one march. Now this is women against women.
Okay.
White women's march,
They don't even like that today.
a white women's march, a colored woman's march,
Okay.
or no march at all.
Oh, really? She said that
That's
it has
what
to
it's
be
quote.
inclusion.
She didn't want to include anybody.
Oh, okay. So
Either
her
all
point
white
was,
women
it didn't matter whether it
or
was
black
white
women
or
can
black.
have one march,
Yeah.
but we're not going to have any march if you want to integrate this.
Okay, now that's very good clarity. I got you.
So Ida B. Wells said like heck, and they just went right into the Ohio delegation where they had some white friends and marched. And also the Delta Sigma Theta was very new at the Howard University. It was like 2 or 3 years old at that time. I may be a little off, but it's very formative years of Delta Sigma Theta. 22 young women, very young college-age women from Howard, also kind of crashed the party, and they marched too. Most of the men in the area who came to see this thing, or many of the men who came to see it was complete havoc. The men didn't want the women marching. They were not only booing them, they were spitting on them, throwing lighted cigarettes, doing everything, assaulting them, touching them inappropriately, doing all kinds of things to stop this march. The cavalry from Maryland had to be called in to get order again. And by the time they restored order, it was very late in the day. They were several hours behind schedule, but they did march. So, but Wilson said they wanted Wilson to urge Congress to amend the Constitution. That's what they wanted. Wilson was probably one of the most racist, if not the racist president we ever had, even he was from New Jersey. He said, I'm not recommending anything. And so consequently, it took another 6 years till 1919 for women to finally get have the amendment passed, and then to be able to vote in New Jersey in 1920, because they didn't pass it right away. They didn't pass it until 1920. But it's called From Suffragettes to the State House, and here's the cover tells the story. The State House, on the cover also, is Lieutenant Governor Sheila Yvette Oliver, our Lieutenant Governor, who was from Newark, graduated from Weequahic High School, was a director of the Leaguers for a while, worked at City Hall, went to Lincoln, and Sheila, who now lives in East Orange, is the highest ranking female elected official from Newark. So it's from the suffragettes to the State House.
And we want to emphasize the incredible work of Sheila Oliver, who began in the same format that we have here as a community outreach worker, and just continue to build and strengthen a number of the outreach organizations such as ours. And now she's in a position whereas she continues that fight, and we're very proud of her.
Yes,
for
we
her
are.
accomplishments.
We are. We're proud to claim her as a Newarker, and
Yeah.
I'm very proud to have Sheila as a personal friend, and she knows all about the book.
Yeah.
In fact, which is very interesting, I'm on Facebook a lot, and one of the first persons to get a book was Senator Loretta Weinberg from
Really?
Bergen County.
Yeah,
Senator Weinberg sent me a message
right.
the other night saying that she introduced Sheila at the New Jersey Women's Political Caucus event the other night, their dinner, and she read from my book, and some of the things that she didn't know about Sheila that she found in the book, she shared with the audience that night.
So the compilation of your book, where does it start, and how does it end?
The idea or the process of writing?
Well, the idea of the book itself, like what are the chapters?
Yes,
composed?
okay.
Yeah.
The chapters are business, and I have a key person for each one. There's an essay on this key person,
Mhm.
followed by bios of other women in the same field.
Okay,
Business is Vonda McPherson.
okay.
Vonda's Kitchen,
Yeah.
who is one of the most enterprising young businesswomen in Newark. She's developing her own brand. She's got a black-eyed pea dip that's
Okay.
being sold, I think, at Whole Foods. She's catering now. Now you can have food delivered by Uber.
Yeah.
You can go to a restaurant. She did
And ShopRite does a delivery, and a number of the major grocery stores are beginning to do deliveries. But it's really fantastic to find that Vonda has been able to get a business sense, whereas people can be able to appreciate the fine work that she
Sure.
does.
So if you haven't been there, go to West Kenny Street.
So what do you talk about in her
Well, I talk about how she got it and what she did before she was doing this. She was
Okay, so it's like a history, a chronology?
Yeah, it's a little bio. It's an expanded bio. It's an essay more or less on the person, so that you'll know where they were born. She was born in Newark.
Right.
Everyone here was either born in Newark or came to Newark or did
Oh,
something.
really? Okay. So
It's
it really
no problem
interfaces
with
with the great women who have really created some positive
Right.
things.
Now, there are people that weren't born here but did maybe more for Newark than 100 people who were born here.
I got you.
So it's the contribution to Newark, and that's explained in
I like that.
the book, yeah. The other subjects are communications. That happens to be Nicole Butler
Mhm.
from
I'm not familiar with her.
the Newark Public Library.
Really?
She and Mo Butler, her husband, who's
Oh, I know Mo, right.
Right,
Mo, yeah,
well-
I was running around with Cory Booker forever.
Right.
I mean,
From
when
the
they
very-
first started getting
well, they
together.
came here. Mo and Nicole came here when they were very young,
Right.
almost right at.
Newark, what is it, Newark,
He was with Do Something.
Yeah, Do Something,
Yeah.
yeah.
But they also bought a house on Clifton Avenue when they were having parties. This is where my interest comes in, more or less for
Okay.
Nicole, because she has her own public information company, but they started giving parties where they'd invite 75, 100 people, and each person would contribute $25.
right.
And then at the end of the evening, they would give the proceeds from the evening to the boys club, the girls club, Big Brothers, two things. So they put little by little, they put a lot of money into the community to help our nonprofits.
That's very cool.
It was a cool idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now she's the development director at the library
That's
working.
interesting reading, yeah,
Yeah.
especially someone who wants to, I would like to take advantage of an opportunity like that.
Right.
Good stuff,
Community-
what else?
Community service is Liz Del Tufo.
Okay.
Liz has been living here forever since she married Judge Del Tufo when she was a young bride. She had her 80th birthday party last year, so she's probably been here 55 years, or maybe even closer to 60, living on Valentine Parkway. But she is one of the key movers of the of the Newark Historic and Landmarks and Preservation Group. Saved many buildings that would have been, historic buildings that would have been destroyed otherwise through this organization, and also leads tours of the city. She's done hundreds of tours, leaving from the museum and other places where people from Newark and outside of Newark get to learn about the city. She has a video that she brings to the suburbs and shows to people here, because everybody seems to have the concept that there's nothing going on in Newark since the riots. We still have a lot of problems, but there's a lot of things going on, even in the neighborhoods where it's most important.
That's important.
Education, I've got many Newark public school educators and other educators But I focus this time on Mary Sue Sweeney Price,
Okay.
who lived on Lincoln Park, Clem Price, and she was...
Is she still with the museum?
No, she retired,
Okay.
but she worked there 40 years, and she was she was director for 25, built this small museum. It's one of the most prestigious museums in the country.
Her and her husband, you can't forget Clem.
No, Clem Price was her husband. I said they were the power couple.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, they had fantastic contributions to our city.
Yeah.
Fashion is Belinda McGuire. You may not know her.
No.
She was a teacher, but she has, the fashion industry is probably the second biggest industry in the world.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Right.
She says whatever it is in this book.
Okay.
She spent years trying to create a curriculum. She does bridal gowns, she sews and does all kinds of things that she learned from her grandmother and her mother. But fashion is her thing, and she wanted to create a curriculum in the Newark school system, and for years there was no go until Marian Bolden allowed her to do that at Westside High School.
Marian to come in for something creative like that?
Yes. Marian allowed the fashion
awesome.
at Westside. But Belinda was pushing this big time,
Yeah.
and now she does it at Marian A. Thomas Charter School.
Okay.
She has former fashion people working for her. She takes young people interested in the business to Paris and other places to show them what goes on the runways, behind the scenes, teaches about fabric, construction, all kinds of different types of clothing, and gets people into the industry. A number of her students are now doing things for the Gap and places like that.
Okay.
Government, I feature Sheila, and I tell all about her from Weequahic going to Lincoln and how she got into politics, why she got into politics, and then also our Senator named Teresa Ruiz.
Okay.
Teresa has been in politics for a number of years. Her big thing is education, pushing all-day kindergartens, and trying to improve the quality of education, which is the foundation of everyone's life. Without a good education, none of us are going anywhere, but she has dedicated herself to that.
Yeah, I remember when Teresa got involved in the politics as well.
Right? Labor. Labor is the former president of the Newark Teachers Union, Carol Graves.
Okay.
Okay, Carol.
And many of these individuals are still alive.
Many are, but then the book goes back to 1822.
Okay.
So we also have a friend of Napoleon III, who lived here in the early 1900s, taught French to Newark public school teachers. We have a woman who was an animal trainer. Her family owned a circus in Europe, and she trained a Bengal tiger that killed 2 men. And she did that for years and years and years without any problem. And then one night, the tiger got her. He ripped her whole side.
No.
And she died here in St. Michael's. She was living in North later. She wound up dying in St. Michael's Hospital.
Wow.
But there, as well as current people and people who are still living, there are many who have passed by, particularly a lot of educators who are no longer with us. Labor's Carol Graves, and Carol, as many people know, during the teacher strike of 1972, she and scores of other teachers were in prison for failing to go back to school when a judge ordered them to go back. They wanted to push for better conditions in the schools, and they stood their ground, and she got the longest sentence.
I don't know, why did you just call it the Book of Women Warriors?
They are. Law enforcement, Sally Carroll.
Oh, God.
One of the first black...
This is huge. Really see this?
Yes.
This is huge. Oh, my God. Okay, so go on.
Sally Carroll was now up in her 90s, was a national NAACP
That's how I got it
official. She was New Jersey's and Newark's wheel in the NAACP for probably 40 or 50 years.
Long time.
She was a cop originally. In those days, women really couldn't do police work, so Sally's job was to sit in the downtown theaters, and for some reason, she says, there were a huge number of male molesters. They would come in and sit next to you and put their hand on your knee. Her job was to sit there, and then somebody would come up, and they knew which theaters to go to. And this was prevalent in a couple of them. and put their hand on her knee or touch her inappropriately, she would call the male police officer and make the arrest right there on the
That's how
field.
they caught him.
Yeah, she later was a detective for Essex County.
Yeah.
Medicine and health services, another person who you may see on Steve Adabato's show sometimes, but she's widely known in her field in medicine and health services, Lois Green. Lois Green, whose children went to Mount Vernon School and was PTA president, lives in the West Ward, has been vice president, and particularly in breast cancer. She was in charge, vice president of the breast cancer unit at St. Michael's. She also was vice president at Beth Israel and East Orange General, and now she's doing a government program in Newark. Performing arts is one of my very best friends in the world. Graduated from Southside High School. Everybody knows her song, I Will Survive. Her name is Gloria Gaynor.
Yeah,
Gloria
strong and
was
keeping Gloria in the mix. Yeah.
Well, I've never written.
Didn't Gloria just get honored?
I was there.
Okay.
And I'm happy to say Gloria was inducted May 6th in Asbury Park, the Paramount Theater, into the New Jersey Hall of Fame.
Congratulations to her.
Thanks, Gloria.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria.
And thank you, Gloria, for mentioning me in your acceptance speech, for being there and your supporting as your friend. And Stephanie, your manager, and Darcel, her best friend. But she was kind enough to mention us all, as she is always. Religion, Maria Westbrook. And Michael, her husband, Maria and Michael, been out on the streets in Newark. They run Greater Life on Chancellor Avenue.
Okay.
They've been out in the streets helping kids who don't have other adults in their lives, who go to bat for them or have serious problems at home. And they have practically adopted half of the South Ward Newark kids who come. They take them on trips, they educate them in computers, and they do everything they can to empower our young people and break this cycle that we have of poverty and lack of education.
Right.
Senior citizens, I have two. One of them is Mary R. White. The book is dedicated to Mary White, who was a pillar of Bethany Baptist Church for 72 years. She died last September. But Mary was also president of the Newark Community School of the Arts, the Friends of Newark Community School of the Arts. She I think I don't know if she originated, but it was one of the first men who cook programs.
Okay.
Almost everybody has a men who cook now.
Yeah.
But I think, as far as I know, the first one I ever went to was at Bethany, and that was because of Mary and her people in her organization. She was also the first black school nurse in Newark, so was responsible for grooming other nurses in the system and consequently seeing to it that thousands of Newark kids had better health, or a chance at it, or that we were able to prevent many of their health problems. The other one is senior citizen, there's two of them, is Celeste Bateman's mother, Elma T. Bateman, who was the only woman when Newark Community Corporation was founded right after the '67 civil disturbances. She was the only one on the board, with Gail Chaneyfield's father and other people from New Community, coming out of
I didn't know that.
Coming out of Queen of Angels, basically.
I know Celeste.
Came out of Queen of
from
Angels.
church.
Yeah. Her mother was a dynamite woman. She also runs the theater group that Celeste now runs.
Oh, really?
Her mother,
Her mother was involved in that kind of thing.
Her mother started it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Her mother and Art Wilson from St. Rose of Lima, principals of the school. Her mother, they used to have theater groups in their home. Then they had them at the church because they got too big, and then they started taking people who had never been to Broadway. To Broadway. Her mother did that up until the last maybe 10 years.
Okay.
She passed away, unfortunately, before the book came out, but I did get a chance to interview her. Sports, my friend Wadi, Vanessa Watson, the girls' coach at Shabazz for...
What was that nickname you gave her?
Excuse me?
You gave her a nickname?
Wadi. Vanessa Watson.
Yeah, right, yeah.
A lot of her friends call her Wadi, our coach. And she is...
She's over at Bloomfield College.
She's at Bloomfield College now. She won over 700 games. Offered her team, we had, I don't know how many, 2004 and 5 we were tournament champions. She did it again back-to-back. The best team in the state, but also in the top 5 in the nation almost consistently through the years. We were ranked as high as 3rd in the nation. And Vanessa is some coach. She's a great, not only that, she tries to save every one of these kids. Before they can practice basketball, they have to do their homework. They don't even get on the court to practice until all their homework is done. She gets some tutoring. Some kids need clothes, may need a winter coat or whatever it is. She's able to get almost everything these kids need. So they're all a family. And Mati Ashaban, who's now plays for the Atlanta Dream, she's been in the WNBA for 10 years, one of the best kids ever out of Shabazz. She just got back from Israel. She plays overseas. I talked to her by phone about Wadi. And also, I'm interviewing Mati for my next book, which is coming out in September, City of Champions, Newark Sports Through the Years.
City of Champions.
It's about sports, mostly men, but there's 2,000 people in it all together.
That's interesting.
Let's see, sports, unsung heroines, the lady who's everything to everyone in the Ironbound, Nancy Zach.
Oh yeah, Nancy.
Nancy Zach
Sure.
saved Riverside Park
Sure.
from destruction or
Yeah.
building or whatever they were going to do with it. She's been on the attack of the Ironbound for all the environmental problems.
Right.
She's at City Hall, crusading for years for a master plan to make sure the budget's on target, and has been just a terrific community servant.
Now, a number of these people that you have already shared with us that you included in your essay have really brought about a prominent area of development in
Right.
terms of not only inspiring people, but developing ways in which Newark is the foundation that it is today. The livelihood in regard to how you composed it is really unique. Now, you have an actual library of every area conditionally that someone can fit into their interests. The development of this book really is something of content that appears to be needed in our public school systems.
Yes.
Now, looking at it from the perspective of what you have been able to proliferate and how you've been able to establish it with the credibility and the research that you've done and the authenticity, how do you think we need to approach building that kind of an interest in the work that you do?
Well, there's several ways. I do want to mention the other people,
Sure.
but to answer your question, I have tried for years to get my, and I know many people in the school system, to get my books into the school system. I've gone to the public schools, I've gone to some of the private schools.
Right.
The responses have been overall not great, a little bit here and there. I would say while the state was in control, there was absolutely no interest. There are people who didn't know Newark. You really have to know. Right now, I'm talking to the people at Newark Public Schools,
Right.
but we're in the mid. Tonight, there's a program on, well, I don't know when this will be televised, but as we sit here.
Yeah.
Tonight, there's a program at Science High School because there are going to be 4 candidates that have been selected to be our next superintendent. So I'm kind of in the middle of this right now. I'm dealing with someone who's in charge now, who may or may not be in charge a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah. I
So,
see.
but
The politics. So
I will say that person has a tremendous interest in history.
Right.
I don't want to mention names because I
Right,
know other people who are running as
Yeah.
well. But I want to thank the person that I did speak with, and he knows who he is,
Right.
for showing tremendous interest in this book because he was born here. He knows many of the people, and he just thumbs them and say, oh wow. That reaction alone, even if they didn't get a book, makes me feel great.
There's nothing
But
wrong with saying who that person is, because that person is.
No, I don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
But I want to tell you something. It's so important
Well, people
because it doesn't matter what position that individual is in. But my point, and that's the reason why I really wanted to bring this out in our conversation as we promulgate this presentation, is that it's necessary that those of us who have an identity in this book, that we should really reinforce the effort of making sure that it really gets saturated in the systems that we need to show this appreciation.
I do think we have to take into account changing times. This is my 7th book on Newark history. I've done 6 calendars, 7 books. The sports book will be the 8th book. But it's just like when I worked at a newspaper. They're almost passé. Books right now, like as I was saying before, libraries do not have reference rooms anymore. Everything is digital. A woman told me the other day who always buys my books, she's not buying them anymore because she does e-books. There are all kinds of things that are detracting from this. The fact that everybody's online, spending their time there, not reading that much anymore, and the fact that books themselves are, I don't want to say extinct, but even if libraries aren't buying books, that many, and they're buying going digital to a large extent and don't have reference rooms, this becomes a tougher road to hoe. I did write a book 10 years ago, another women's book, called Defying the Odds, Triumphant Black Women of Newark with Marian on the cover. So this is my second women's book, but I found that audiences that I go to, where when I order these books, I have to estimate it, so people that were buying at a talk 20 or 30 books are now buying 2 or 3 or 4.
Right.
In my mind, I'm still selling 30.
Right.
So I wind up with the garage, and the cost has tripled since I began to do this.
Right.
I used to be able to do a book for $2,000 or $3,000. If I can do one for under 10, now it's good.
But even for the nostalgia, they're great collector's items. And in most cases, a number of us who have gone digital can still find a resource in a hard copy of a book, especially when it shows the credibility of the work and the authenticity of the work that's gone into it. And I really appreciate the idea of knowing all these wonderful people that you have mentioned that is in the book. Why don't you go ahead and finish
Sure.
as far as the list?
I just wish everybody would adopt Herb's attitude, because it used to be that almost everybody I came in contact had this, particularly when I wrote the first women's book. I mean, I sold a lot of copies of that book, and because of that and because of my retirement dinner, I used to give the proceeds to the Newark schools.
Okay.
So I've given $50,000 in proceeds. I've never made 5 cents on a book.
Okay.
And then I had a storm, Hurricane Sandy came along.
So it's a fundraising effort as well. And
It's become a very expensive hobby.
Yeah,
But I'm retired now.
And I agree.
I'm retired on the same amount of money.
I'm putting together a magazine.
I've been retired for 14 years. I can't afford to do this anymore.
Right.
At my age, plus the fact that now it's a huge hustle.
But we should really look at the idea of how important and the value of it. Hard copies are so unique.
Well,
because it's special.
They're unique, but they're also heavy, because at my age, it's getting harder for me to bring them up the stairs. It's a lot of physical work, and I've had a heart attack, so I really have, I shouldn't be lugging them around as much as I am. But getting back to the book,
Sure.
I did Nancy. The visual arts, another person that this book is dedicated to, because the book ranges in people from age 17 to 99. Alexis Morast, who's the next Sarah Vaughan. She's sung all over the world already in South Africa, made albums. She's a kid with the same kind of concept that Sarah had, the same kind of swing, but she's an old soul. And this kid can really sing.
That's awesome.
And she is on her way. I told her I want to go to the Grammys with her.
Can you talk a little bit about her?
She's born in Newark. She has a short bio, but I told her when she first got 14 that I put her in my next book.
That's good.
So Alexis, in 99, I'm not going to mention who it is, but we have several people in their 90s, including Mary White, to whom the book was dedicated. But the other dedication is to a young poet who died 2 years ago, 29 years old of childhood diabetes. I know her from birth. I knew her from birth, and her family. Her name is Bria Blackberry Molasses Knight. She spoke, she's protege of Baraka's, spoke at Baraka's memorial service at Symphony Hall, wrote 3 books on poetry and a CD, and was beginning to speak to everybody in the world, the sororities, Women's Day, churches, and then she was diagnosed at 13, and in between that and 29, she had a couple of life-threatening situations, but 29, that was it. And Bria, there's a poem in here that she wrote, and Bria wrote a poem called Don't Wait for My Funeral. She wrote it 2 or 3 weeks before she passed away. Her friend, 2 of her friends are going to be with me at the Newark Public Library. You're all invited on June 6th. Okay. Will this be here?
Go on. June 6th is an opportunity where we can be able to help establish getting people aware of what's going to be going on.
June 6th, 2018. It's from 6 to 8. The doors are open at 5 because it looks like if people turn out. Now, they say they're going to buy books. They say they're going to come. They may or they may not. But if it turns out the way we like it to, it's probably going to be the largest gathering of prominent Newark women that I can ever recall, and I've been here since I went to work for the Star Ledger in late 67. So in the course of almost what is it, 60 years or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
right.
50-something years. This is huge. It's also going to be a gathering of, a reunion of the people who grew up in Baxter Terrace.
Oh, really?
Who are in my age range, because Cynthia Oliver Malone, whose father owned Sonny Oliver's Flower Garden at the foot of High Street, Martin Luther King and Elizabeth Avenue. Cynthia is in here as a businesswoman. She used to run Whiskey World on Hayes Circle.
Okay.
And she is coming from Georgia for this, and consequently, there are a couple other people from Baxter Terrace, BT.
So yeah,
It's
a
going
real
to be a
reunion.
BT reunion. It's
I
going to be a
love
lot of different things
Wow.
besides just, but we're also
That's
dedicating the book to Bria and to
Okay.
Mary White.
That's
And
nice.
Bria comes out of Tabernacle Baptist Church,
Right.
and I knew her mother when her mother was at New Eden Baptist Church when she was 14.
Okay.
And I knew her grandmother, Helen Aldridge, who was at New Eden as an usher at that time. So these two people are very important people in my lives, but more so to the community. And it's just a shame that we lost Bria at such an early age. She's writing a poetry. Visual arts, there's a gallery that's been around now for a little bit more than 10 years. It started in the Ironbound. It's called Gallery of Faro. Gallery of Faro is on Market Street between Washington and Halsey, and University and Halsey, and University of Washington. It is, the two girls are, young women are Yvonne Davis and Emma, I can't think of Emma's name, but Emma, they're gonna have a book signing at their gallery. Since I wrote about women the last time, this is an amazing thing because there are many young businesswomen, whereas when I was growing up, I was expected to be, you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse if you were a woman my age, you could be a social worker maybe, or a secretary if you didn't get to college. And this is Emma Wilcox.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, Emma. Yvonne Davis and Emma Wilcox are the owners of Gallery of Faro. We're going to be doing a book signing at their Gallery of Faro.
Okay.
We're doing a book signing there in the summertime. And I'm going to be at every library going, East Orange, West Orange, South Orange, Montclair, Vauxhall, from June and July. And then Rutgers is having a huge, Marcia Brown at Rutgers has arranged for the Chancellor, Nancy Gander, who's in the book, to do a huge book signing at Newark Express in the refurbished Haynes building on Broad Street on September 18th. That's sponsored by the women's organization in New Jersey, PAC, which Marcia heads as president, the Women's Studies Program, or Gender Studies at Rutgers, the Institute of Jazz Studies. Even though I've written several jazz books, this is not one, but they're supporting me on that and a couple other groups. So that's going to be another big event. Joe DiVincenzo from the county is having an event in the rotunda of the courthouse in August after the budget hearings are over, and Teresa Ruiz and our Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver can be honored. There's about 20 people who work at the courthouse who are in the book.
Okay.
Same thing at City Hall. Every government official anywhere, we're looking to do something at City Hall as well. And of course, Mildred Crump goes to Bethany, as I do, is our city council president. So every elected official, county or state or any or city who's a female from Newark is in this book.
That's beautiful. Listen, you really are someone that I really value a great deal. You know, Barbara Kukla is a literary icon in our community and a very wonderful treasure. Someone who's proliferated a lot of information that many of us would have no idea on how to be able to obtain it. And her writing style is very unique, that you find not only comfort, but inspiration.
Thank you.
In the way that she really puts together the combination of the prose
Yes.
and the areas of being able to educate an individual as they are enabling an opportunity to learn more about the history of Newark in particular, but specifically about individuals that, you know, Lisa Dirty. You see her in the book, you better get you a book. You have quite a few people here listening, and I appreciate it, yeah. And so we want to encourage everyone to get a copy of this book. This is a great book, especially in today's area of interest in women and the movement that women have had an opportunity to invest their time and special gifts that God has given them so that our lives can be better. We want to thank you, Barbara, for once again coming and sharing with us and being aware of the great work that you're doing, and we're going to be looking forward to the next one that you're going to be releasing. And we want to just continue to encourage everyone to become a part of this history. If you are really someone who knows how important literature is in our lives, get this book. And we'll be looking forward to being at some of those parties.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Eric. Appreciate it.
And thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. We're here today out on the campsite at Branchbrook Park in the beautiful tennis facility at the Althea Community Center with Ms. Marian Rubin. Marian is a professional photographer, has really captivated her audiences with some of her more than mysterious methods of being able to bring out the art and the culture of the style that photography can represent. And she has been very successful in being able to share this wonderful work of art that she's been able to create. Thank you, Marian. It's really a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Thanks so much, Herb, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am a devotee of Newark. I was born in Newark and grew up here, mostly, and I still have a love for this city.
That's beautiful, and that is what's important and inspirational about the work that you do, that it does captivate the love that you have, not only for the city, but for the art that is promulgated in this city, that Newark and its surrounding neighborhoods, Maplewood, Montclair, Belleville, Bloomfield, and others, have a type of a way in which we can be able to produce great works of art. And here we are with tennis being our backdrop, which I would like to talk a little bit about as well, because you are a tennis advocate. But let's talk a little bit about your history in regard to photography and how it has evolved into you being a publisher and representing a number of different ways in which people can enjoy your talent. How did you start with photography?
My father was the family photographer, and for whatever reason, apparently I was born to be a photographer. I got my first camera when I was 9, and I've walked around with a camera ever since. Early on in my career, if you want to call it that, photography has not been my main career. I worked full-time as a school social worker for 35 years in Belleville, but I have never stopped photographing. I don't remember what year it was. I never had a very sophisticated camera. Like I said, my first camera was a Brownie 620. And somewhere in the early 60s, I think it was, I was very active in the American Association of University Women. And they made me chairman of the arts committee because they figured I was the artsy craftsy type. So there was a statewide arts festival, and I decided to enter a photograph because I had to set an example for the people I was encouraging to enter. And I entered a photograph that I had taken with a $3 camera. And it won first prize in photography. What I learned from that was that it's not the equipment that does the work. I learned very early on that you can have the finest photographic equipment in the world and take rotten photos, and vice versa. And I think this is why I initially became kind of hooked on the iPhone as my camera of choice. I think it was in about 2009 when I got my first iPhone. And I saw the work of some guy, and I was stunned at the work he was able to do with his iPhone camera. And one of the early apps that intrigued me was an app called Hipstamatic, which I still adore. And the thing that was unique about it was that you could change lenses and films within the app to get different effects. And this just gave me a jump start to a new lease on life in photography.
And that technique really created a style that has been one of your patented ways in which we have been able to share your photography work. And, it's incredible that you would say some of the things that I had learned as well, that it's not the equipment. It's really knowing how to capture the moment. You capture a lot of wonderful moments and have done it in a number of different ways. In your relationship of being able to develop your product and how it has really now turned into something that is profitable, where do you see the most intriguing methods of being able to capture these images?
The most intriguing methods? That's a really tough one to answer. I really don't know. I am active on Facebook, mostly with photography groups, and particularly mobile photography. And it just astounds me, the creativity of some people and what they're able to create using basically a rudimentary camera. Of course, the apps help. It just amazes me. There's an endless future. But I think there's an endless future in photography in general. I think you can go as far as your mind will take you.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. What is it that gives you the marketing skill to know how to take your products and then make them available so that others can be able to appreciate them?
know what? I don't really do an awful lot of marketing. I'm at a very fortunate place in my life. I am retired from my full-time career, and fortunately, I am financially stable, not wealthy, but I can exist. And I don't do an awful lot of marketing, but I think a lot of people see my work mostly on Facebook or on my website, and they're intrigued. They're particularly intrigued by the fact that they're produced with an iPhone. And people still say to me, oh, you can't do a large print, or it suffers quality. And the interesting thing is that that's not so. I enter competitions, I enter gallery shows, and they have no idea what kind of camera I use. They don't ask, and as long as the image is acceptable for their show and they like it, and I've won several awards, and that satisfies me.
When you think about the ability to be able to identify a real good shot and do it with the expertise that you have, you also have found, and as you shared with us earlier, a method in which you can use the different applications that are available. When do you find it the time necessary to use an app to enhance your work?
I post-process everything. I am never satisfied with just the original, whether I've taken it with an app or whether I've taken it with a native camera. But I always feel I can improve on it, and I have many apps. I have some basic apps that will sharpen, that will improve saturation or contrast. I almost always process something. Sometimes it's adding texture. Sometimes it's in the cropping. I'm never satisfied with almost never, I should say. The apps are fascinating. I find as much fun in the post-processing as I do in getting the shot.
Thinking in terms of the ability to be able to know how to use the app, because there are a number of them, and if you're not really familiar with using them, then on a lot of your opportunities, it can ruin a particular product. Has that ever happened to you?
No, because the original is always saved intact. I would never use an app that destroyed my original. But there are many times I've gone back to square one. I may have gone through several steps in post-processing and get it all done and say, not happy with this. It's either too much texture, maybe too much contrast. I make mistakes, but fortunately the original is always there. The apps themselves, there's a learning curve. There is no doubt about it. You know, a lot of people think that you can open an app and go 1, 2, 3 and you have magic. And that's not necessarily so. Like anything else, you have to learn. And you do one step at a time and you learn from your process. But I love the post-processing. To me, it's a miracle. I can make a flower look like a painting. I can add texture, make it look like an antique photo. And I try to make the processing fit the image, whether it's a portrait or a landscape.
If you're tuning in, we're talking to photographer and book author Marian Rubin, who has been very supportive in our program week here, the tennis program that we have, and has donated some tennis material. You're an avid tennis player yourself. Why did you get involved with the sport of tennis?
That's a very interesting question. I was not interested in tennis as a youngster. I married a man who was a tennis player. And the marriage came with a membership at Berkeley Tennis Club. I was stuck with it. I automatically became a member. And so my husband thought he was doing me a great favor by getting me a few lessons with a highly esteemed pro by the name of Herman. And I have to tell you, Herb, I hated every minute. I hated it. I wanted no part of it. I didn't want to run around a court chasing balls. It made my hair frizzy. And then somehow or other, when my children were young, again, I think I mentioned before, I was always the artsy craftsy type. I got a job at a swim club teaching crafts, arts and crafts. And with that little job, it was a summer job, came a membership at the club. So my kids got camp, my husband got to play tennis, and it was a boon. It was a fabulous little summer job. So there were people that kept urging me to play tennis, but the women at the club wouldn't play tennis with me. I was a rank amateur. I was a real beginner. I could barely get the ball over the net. And then somehow or other, I started to play. And the better I got, the more enthusiastic I got. And I am competitive. I like winning. So that's how it all evolved. I am very grateful that today I'm still playing tennis and loving every minute. It is one of my passions.
One of the things that I noticed also, you're right, there's a progression. Once you start, it's almost like an addiction. I mean, like you want to find more. You got to get better, or you find out that maybe it's the ball that I'm using, or the racket, or the way I swing. And I agree with you in terms of how it captivates you and really wants you to get more involved. Now you are involved in recreational tennis, and you do a lot of activities in the clubs. What club do you spend your time with mostly?
I'm a member at Center Court Club in Chatham, and basically I only play twice a week. I take a clinic one day, which is great. It gives me my exercise and works on, we have drills for strokes, and my skills have improved. And then I play in a ladies round robin one day a week. Occasionally I'll play in another game if someone invites me to play, but my life is taken up with a lot of other things, including photography. I shoot every day. I can't help it. It's just who I am.
You brought one of your books to share with us. Why don't we talk a little bit about the book that you have? Is this one of the newer books?
This, I don't remember, a couple of years ago, a 14 maybe. No, actually, this was done in 11. The interesting thing about this book is that I met some photographers actually on Facebook that I became very friendly with. On Facebook, never met them. They lived in Geneva, Switzerland at the time. Both husband and wife were photographers. He was a Norwegian, she was an American, but she worked for the U.S. Embassy. So one of their loves was to go to Venice for Carnival every year. And they kept urging me to go, and I was kind of nervous, and I didn't know these people. And somehow or other, one day, I decided to look up airfares, and next thing I knew, I actually met them for the first time on the train station in Milan. It was an amazing experience. But the thing that is also unique about this particular book is that they were all iPhone photographs also.
Oh, really?
Back in 11, yes.
Let's see some of
All right, let's see. We'll open. Well, this is my cover.
Wow, this is a beautiful cover.
Beautiful little girl, dressed as I called her Butterfly Girl. And she was actually shooting. Here are some photographs from
And the
Carnival.
color, I mean, from an iPhone. Can you believe that? The texture, and it's really gorgeous. And you were able to reproduce it, yeah.
This was with, I think, the iPhone 4S maybe, or the 3G. I'm now on an 8. So that tells you a little bit about the evolution.
Yeah.
And I do find that the camera on my new iPhone is sharper.
Okay.
But you can't tell it from here.
Right. Well, I mean, it does have a very good clarity. I mean, here you have white on white. Let's go back to the white on white. And you can actually see the detail, of the kind of garment that they have on. Here it is.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we won't be able to display that in this presentation, but the detail of this particular shot is phenomenal, and especially coming out of an iPhone. And it's amazing how you were able to capture the moment in terms of the clarity of his expression, which is very unique.
This was an incredible experience. Carnival in Venice is something, if you're a photographer, it's a must. It's got to be on your bucket list. Of course, you get up very, very early in the morning before dark, and it's freezing cold there then. It's freezing cold in Venice then. Yes, it's winter. This was February, and I don't think I've ever been so cold. And in the dark, you can fall over tripods if you're not careful. That's how many photographers are there. As many as the performers, but it's such an amazing. The performers come out early in the morning to catch the early light, and that beautiful early morning light and the reflections off the water. Venice is magical.
Do you find your work produced better when you travel, or is shot locations really important?
I think my work is about passion, and I don't think it matters where I am. It's about light, but it's also about connections. As I mentioned, I was a social worker. I have a social worker mentality. It's just who I am. And that I connect with people in that sense. And I think what you see in my work very often, particularly in portraits, is love. And I really think that that's key. I think it's the connection. I don't consciously pay that much attention to the light. I defy the rules sometimes. Sometimes it's a miss. But I shoot from the heart. And that's really what it's about.
So you have something else to share with us? Let's see what it
Well,
is.
I wanted to show you one of my portraits.
Okay.
And what's unique about this is that I printed it on a recycled paper bag. You may have guessed that there's a bit of a rebel in me, that I defy the odds. And I'm always swimming upstream.
Can you believe that, you know? And then to make it look, because it has that nostalgic look, you know, when it has been printing on something as differently. Bloomingdale, right, quite
But
frankly.
I've used actually an A&P as
Is that right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Now, what compels you to want to do something like that?
Well, I'm big on conservation. I'm big on protecting the environment. And I just thought it would be kind of unique to use all these paper bags that may not be recycled. I've actually exhibited some of these prints
Is that right?
more than once, yeah.
In this format.
Yes, on a brown paper bag.
You have framed it, or, you know?
Well, in order to see that it's on a paper bag, you really have to be able to see the back.
Well, you know, there are all those frames now that you can spin them and you put them in a little glass
I
case.
guess, and you can see the back as well as the front. I should do that. But I submitted this to a gallery recently, and I actually sent him two prints. I sent him one on the brown paper bag and one that was a more traditional. I don't know which one he exhibited. I'd like to find out.
Now, you have this one here. It looks like an oil painting in terms of, I'm talking about the ones in your portfolio.
So this one, I mentioned that you can make it look like a painting. This is an app. I love doing this sometimes. It's just fun. And I did want to just show you a portrait
Okay.
because that's where my heart is. Now, all I have to do is find them. Oh, I want to show you one of Newark.
Okay. Now, this design here is one that really shows something a little unique in terms of the rain and how it was dropping on the lens.
This is called A Rainy Night in Newark. Newark. And actually the drops were on my windshield. So basically that's it.
Okay. Well, that's really important that we did get a chance to see some of the ideas that you have been able to produce, and we appreciate that.
It was really fun. And photography, as you can tell, is a passion.
Shot from the heart. You know, I really appreciate the inspiring moment that you're giving to us as we continue to develop ways in which we can really show the importance of art and culture and how it really reflects the style that we're presenting in the sport of tennis. We really appreciate your friendship and the opportunity to make an investment in what we're doing here. And we want to share more opportunities with you and your work with our viewers in the near future.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really a delight, and I love being here in Newark at Branchford Park. I was here 2 weeks ago to see the cherry blossoms, and my heart is still in Newark.
Well, thank you so much. And it's very helpful for us to be able to have someone with your commitment to one of the art forms that I am very passionate about as well, and something that we need to encourage a number of our young people to be involved with. Thank you so much for this time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay. And thank you for tuning in.